Let's get ready to spread 'em. Oh, yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Here we are, ready to spread them. 10:15, Tuesday, October 18th. We are gathered here tonight to get through this thing called life.
Electric word, life, it means forever.
But I'm here to tell you, there's something else.
That's something else.
Bong. All right, so we're gathering to do a show debunking all the ludicrous Western media propaganda I've seen popping up lately about the Ukraine conflict. And we're bringing in Matt Ehret tonight from Canadian Patriot Review, since he's an expert in the history of that area and the political goings-on over there. Running a bit late. He seems to have been caught up by something else, so Rain and I will fill in from the get-go. What's the word up in the Yukon, Rain?
Not too much. It's still not winter yet, oddly enough. We had a bit of our first snow that stayed, around for about half a day.
Yeah.
And then it went up to like 20 fucking degrees again.
Oh, shit.
Day, which was insane. Like, I think that was probably a record-setting temperature for October 15th or whatever it was, 16th.
Wow.
Yeah. 16th. Yeah, Sunday. It's crazy.
Yeah, we're not even getting that down here.
Yeah. And yeah, but I don't know. It looks like the snow is finally coming about a week from now, and then we'll be, into the minuses, and it'll probably stay there for.
And then that'll be it.
9 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we're not even getting temps like that up here. Down here, I should say.
Yeah, I saw you were a little cooler, eh? Like only +8 or something like that.
Yeah, it's cold, man.
Yeah,
it's cold.
Yeah. Otherwise,
she's coming.
Not too much going on. Work's slowing down a little bit, so that's nice because it's just been balls out hectic for the past 5 months. So that's nice. I think less stress. So that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in news for us, I'm going to share up our Twitter feed here. Share screen, brave tab, Twitter. I'm just going to turn off my air conditioner.
Doing up the Lexi stuff?
That should sound better. Yeah, just upgrade crew on what's going on in that department. Oh, and we've got Matt Ehret is in town. I'm going to stop sharing.
Oh, he's here.
Right.
All right.
There he is. Sorry about that.
No sweat. No sweat.
Tech issues on my side.
Oh, yeah?
All's good. All's good. It was just the microphone. Hey, Rain. How you doing? Oh.
Hey, good, Matt. You?
Hey. Good. Is my microphone coming in okay? Like, is my sound coming in okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Yeah? Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Your background is disconcertingly defocused.
Blurry.
Getting that
weird,
bokeh effect.
Is it too weird?
I wish they'd give you a slider. They go so hard on that.
Yeah, let me just get rid of this stupid blur. There's no need for this.
No, nothing embarrassing happening in the background.
Just a relatively tacky chair, but not too big a deal. No, let me hold on. How do I do this?
We only allow Danish furniture on super spreaders.
Oh yeah, this is IKEA. It's
close enough.
Swedish, yeah.
Danes, Swedes, no difference.
Viking descendants.
That's right. Yeah, so wildly, minutes before getting the stream going with Rain, that bullshit infographics channel dropped a whole new video. Why Putin's invasion of Ukraine is a failure. You want to watch a few seconds of this?
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, it's good. Did you watch any of the other ones that I sent links for?
I
Have you had
did.
time?
I did play them tonight. Yeah, they were short and bitter. Yeah.
Bitter, just mean and bad. Okay,
They
here we
just
go.
yeah, they're mean spirited.
The like xenophobic. Like, look at the dumb idiot Russian like trying to use a grenade but blowing himself up. Like,
I
just
know, and as you pointed out, just the faces of the animated little Russians that they made all had like these angry, like all Russians, you could identify them because they look like this. Oh,
yeah, the
like every single
snarling. Yeah.
one.
I sent you that Twitter thread, right?
I didn't see it. No.
Okay, yeah. So to me, right away, that struck me. That took me right back to the poster you see leading up to World War One. Go fight the Hun, and
Right.
the Hun is this a horrible, snarling menace coming into the window to steal your babies and stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, they have to dehumanize it, the
Yeah.
enemy. And that's why you have also a lot of like references to orcs. You know, the Ukrainian swastika wearing fighters are often on filming themselves on YouTube streams, celebrating how they're fighting orcs. So and that's the same thing as being fed to a lot of Westerners in Canada and the United States. They literally are being trained to think of Russians as being subhuman, making it impossible to think rationally about what the hell is actually going on and why are we actually engaged in this insane fight with a people who really want to work with us and have given us every chance to work together for 20 plus years. And yet here we are spitting their face, starting wars provocatively. Anyway, we'll get into this in the show today.
Right. That's why we brought you on, some context, because I mean that's how I feel. I feel much and bizarrely enough, it feels so strange to say that a clear voice of reason was given by Donald Trump, of all people. He basically said that several times. Like, we're not going to get anywhere yelling at each other, so let's sit down and talk.
Yeah.
And that's like, instead here we are like, stupid China, stupid Russia, you're all idiots. Like it's like almost xenophobia.
It's like 1953 all over again, like hardcore McCarthy. It's like we just walked out of a time capsule. It's weird.
It's like, didn't we do anything for the last 70 years? Yeah, okay, here we go. We'll just watch a little bit of this. The flavor comes out right away.
The Afghan war raged for 10 years and killed
hear?
over 15,000 Russian soldiers. It was a devastatingly costly campaign.
Okay, so Soviet-Afghan war, 15,000 Russian casualties. This guy's new video, previous video to this, claimed that in these, what has it been, 6 months of war in Ukraine?
Yeah.
55,000 dead, 250,000 casualties.
Yeah, I think he said, what did you say? It was how many dead did he say?
55,000 with
Actually,
the number out of the Ukrainian.
What he said was 200,000
casualties. He
Russian deaths, 54,000 missing in action.
He said he goes 200,000 casualties, 55,000 killed in action, I think is what the info said. And so it might even be deliberately confusing, because I have heard people quote that 250,000 figure, and it's just like, we'll get into it. But I just wanted to point out that he said he's trying to sell us that 55,000 have died in the Ukraine in 6 months, but 10 years Soviet-Afghan war, it was 15,000. So like, what kind of fighting are they doing? I guess the dumb Russians are just willfully walking onto mines and dying like by the hundreds a day.
For the Soviet Union that directly led to its downfall and collapse. On February 24th, 2022, Putin said, "Hold my beer," and launched an even worse military disaster. But is Putin's Ukrainian invasion really a failure? Or are we all guilty of falling for Western propaganda, as Russia would claim? Getting good intelligence on the ongoing invasion of Ukraine is difficult, which makes drawing conclusions equally difficult. Wars are very dynamic things, and what starts off blazingly well can end in disaster or quagmire. Just ask the United States after 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. In both cases, U.S. forces utterly decimated the conventional forces of each nation, left us and very large red flags straight from day one that signal this will be one of Russia's worst defeats since the start of World War II. For starters, it's become abundantly clear that Vladimir Putin was operating on very faulty intelligence when he launched the invasion. Shortly before Russian forces moved to staging areas, he tasked his intelligence apparatus with infiltrating Ukraine and bribing or intimidating Ukrainian military and political officials into cooperating with Russia. These intelligence agents were also supposed to take the general temperature of the population in order to gauge whether or not Ukraine could muster the will to fight an invasion. Perhaps unsurprisingly for the Russian dictator, the verdict was exactly what he wanted to hear. Ukraine was not just ready for an invasion, but its population would welcome Russian soldiers with open arms and warm borscht.
Wow. Like, I'm not even that trained in the region's politics, but to me, he's messing up the idea of the republics in the east of Ukraine with the entirety of Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fallacy here. Like, people should know that the East Ukrainian region is super. I mean, you have a vast majority, I would say 90+% ethnic Russian population in eastern Ukraine. In those regions, especially, you could see it in the votes cast to rejoin Russia, which was historically. These regions were part historically of Russia for hundreds of years. It's a relatively new phenomenon that the current borders were demarcated as they are. But I mean, the amount of fallacy just in this little tiny bit is outstanding.
It is.
I don't even know where to begin.
It's true, right? And you know, we spoke quickly before this and realized we couldn't sit and debunk like an article or a video. It's because it's just sentence, word by word, needs to be deconstructed.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing that I was looking at, Caitlin Johnstone had published a really good op-ed not that long ago. I think it was in May or April of this year. And she basically cited directly from Max Boot, leading neocon, speaking to NBC. And she had representatives from the White House directly speaking to various CNN talking heads, describing Biden's new information warfare strategy, which is massively lying about everything to the American population and using unverified claims from anonymous sources in the intelligence agency, presenting it as if it's actual fact in order to basically predictively warn Russia that we know you might do things like use a false flag operation to justify more attacks in Kiev or something. Now, none of this information was actually verified. They admitted so, and they admitted that they were lying. And the way that they presented these the case to their CIA operatives, Project Mockingbird operatives inside of CNN and MSNBC, was to try to get across that, look, we're lying to the American people, but you're all in on it with us now. We're all together in this game of psyching out Putin and Xi Jinping together. But it's like they openly admitted just to telling open, direct misinformation and lies. And so, yeah, the guy was at least honest in this video that you showed in that short clip to say that you can't really, it's difficult to know what actual stats are in the context of warfare.
Yeah.
What he didn't say is like, yeah, we're just making up numbers in order to justify ever more big military industrial contracts to pour, weapons into Ukraine at ever increasing rates without people who even know how to work them. Like, you're giving them advanced artillery and munitions. It takes months, if not years, for some of these things like the F-35s and other things that they're trying to give Ukraine to actually train Ukrainians to use them.
I know, no consideration is given to that.
That's the guy. Well. Right there. You got him.
Yes, this is the TV interview where it says U.S. official. I don't have the time right now to scour through and find the video of him talking, but the best quotes are right there. It doesn't have to be solid intelligence, but we're going to feed it right to you. And he's laughing while he's saying this, and the host of the show is laughing. They're like, "LOL." He says we're going to make stuff up that sounds embarrassing to Russia, and we're going to tell it to you, and then you're going to report it. And it doesn't have to be solid. It doesn't have to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And so the guy said it, and it's been 6 months of this. yet the unquestioning, unwavering, sucking in these videos like the one we just started of just like, wow, Russians are so dumb. They blow themselves up.
No, the best one was the video that you had sent me, the first one that you had sent, which began with the comparison to the U.S. success in Desert Storm and how effective the U.S. was destroying Iraq in Desert Storm, comparing that to the ineffective incompetence of Russia today in Ukraine, as if it was the same thing, as if the MO, the modus operandi, or even the intention was the same, and it was just Freudian psychological projection saying, look how ineffective they are, because they didn't obliterate that entire country and send them back to the Stone Age the way we did to Iraq. And it's like, that was maybe not even the intention for Russia. Maybe Russia wanted to simply secure and protect their ethnic Russian people who have been bombarded by Nazi-led attacks and shelling for 8 years since the U.S.-run coup in 2014 was finalized by Victoria Nuland and Biden. And since then, there's been 14,000 mostly civilians killed in East Ukraine alone. They already had a vote in 2014 voting to become an independent country because they could see the people living in Lugansk and Donetsk were very clear that, we have this giant operation full of Nazi regalia that's taken full control of big chunks of the military.
I'd be scared.
Yeah, they're very scared. Obviously, it's been declared by these freaks that the Slavic race must be exterminated and or enslaved if they're permitted to live. And these are all like ethnic Slavs, mostly Russian. And so they've been begging Russia to save them for 8 years straight. That's all they really wanted to do. And on top of that, what they don't get across in these little CIA-funded micro-animated videos for lobotomy cases is that, they're saying how bad the economy is of Russia and, how on top of things Kiev is. Well, 85% of the resources and the economic wealth of Ukraine is located in the east in those very regions that are now part of Russia, according to any idea of democratic international law and referenda. I mean, you have to, even though currently the U.S. has been bullying all of the its client states around the UN to simply say they don't recognize the democratically, the democratic elections that had just occurred, with observers, observing on all hundreds of observers who are now facing death threats, who are on Ukrainian kill lists hosted by NATO. I mean, that's actually
like Roger Waters.
Roger, yeah, exactly. What a threat to human world peace, Roger Waters.
Yeah,
Floyd.
I don't know. Some of his guitar players can really shred. Might bring the house down.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's a joke. So
yeah. Have you heard that, Rain? The Ukrainian kill list. It's got Roger Waters on it. Yeah. Hilarious. So
it's a big list.
So
they got 14-year-old kids who are like, living in Ukraine, who are Russian ethnic kids, and they just simply have committed the crime of going on TikTok, saying their thoughts about how much they don't like the fact that their friends have been killed by shelling, and they want the Nazis to go away. And these kids have found themselves on these Ukrainian hit lists, and they've killed. I mean, people who have been on that list have been targeted and have been assassinated. Like Daria Dugin, Alexander Dugin's daughter, was recently blown up in a
that's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Moscow. So yeah, it's not a little thing.
No, unreal. So to get us through, an hour pretty quickly, I just put together some questions that come from where we guess that they're trying to take you. So the first one I'd like to ask you. You ready? Ready for rapid fire?
Sure.
Is Vladimir Putin a dictator?
No.
Okay, that was great. Moving on. Why isn't he? Why do they say he is a dictator? I've heard he's murdered his way to the top. Dissension is a death sentence. A strong arm tin pot dictator, basically, that's lucky to be granted the nukes and oil.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, a lot of this stuff is again, it's projection and deflection. So you take the things that you do as an imperialist, and then you take those attributes, and then you just simply launch them on accusatorily onto your opponent.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's really what we've got. I mean, look at the case of the beacon and model of democratic freedom is Vladimir Zelensky, apparently. And I mean, Zelensky has openly been caught in the Pandora Papers as having directly been as having over $600 million to his name directly within offshore shell companies and British Cayman Islands accounts. That's him alone.
Who is this?
Oh, that's Volodymyr Zelensky himself.
Zelensky, yeah.
Democratic bastion of hope and freedom. Highest paid stand-up comic in the world. I mean, you're looking at a regime right now in Kiev, which again, it's being sold as the great democracy. I mean, they have banned, as of this year, as of June of this year, 11 political parties. The biggest, the For Life Party, which was the second biggest political party in Ukraine, has been banned. All of its offices have been taken down. Its officials, people have been arrested. They've been shot at. Some have been killed, tortured. But 11 parties directly have been completely taken down. Their assets confiscated by the state. Every single opposition media voice has been shut down unilaterally by the current Kiev regime. And on top of that, the Kiev regime directly is in bed with various figures like the Biden clan. We know that, for example, here, to put meat on the bones to that statement, Zelensky's owner is a guy named Igor Kolomoskoy. Kolomoskoy is a multi-billionaire energy magnate, oligarch of Ukraine, but he also runs the Zionist, the Israeli European Parliament. The guy is the primary owner of Burisma Energy Holdings, the biggest energy firm in all of Ukraine, through two shell companies. This has been proven through and through. And who was caught on Burisma?
We know that name. We know that name.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Biden clan had graft there, with Biden Hunter getting something like $50,000 a month with no skills, just to sit on the board and do nothing, giving I forget what percentage to the big guy.
The big guy, yeah.
Edo Pete, aka, right?
Yeah.
And Burisma, I mean, this is part of the thing, that even when you had the prosecutor general of Ukraine, who was actually doing his job and trying to get to the bottom of the massive graft and corruption of Burisma, and also that takes you directly into the Biden regime. Biden, went out of his way to threaten Kiev, at the time it was Poroshenko, by withholding $1 billion of aid if they didn't fire the prosecutor general. And Biden Joe brags at the Council on Foreign Relations with, I think it's Richard Haas that's sitting next to him, the Rhodes Scholar, laughing away with the audience, how, by God, they went and did it. They went and fired this guy and put in somebody who was more to our liking. And he tells it.
He tells it like your grandpa tells about when he had to call Rogers and give them shit about his phone bill, and he got a charge removed.
Yeah, it's weird.
He told them. Yeah, and that's how he tells the story. Then Trump gets impeached for suggesting that Ukraine look into Burisma.
Yeah, just for something like that, right? So I mean, this and I mean, the whole thing. What was the big deal with the IMF? The whole thing around Biden as the viceroy of Ukraine during the Obama years was that, look, Ukraine was being told, as part of joining the European Union, was that they would have to cap and even lower their labor costs and wages, while at the same time suffering 2 to 3 even more % increase in civilian and industrial use of energy. So they're demanding that they extract more money out of the people. This is back in 2013. They extract more money out of the people that will have to pay more money arbitrarily to the energy companies that are owned by Igor Kolomoskoy, who not only owns Zelensky in his entire career, because this guy literally bought Zelensky early on,
right?
But also is the primary bankroller, as ironically a Jewish guy nominally is the biggest bankroller. It was openly his money, and he bragged about that got Azov Battalion, the Nazi Azov Battalion, off the ground and running in 2014, at the same time as he created the Idar Battalion. And I think he also funds the C-14 movement too of neo-Nazi street thugs in Kiev.
What are each of those? The Idar, what are they?
Haidar is kind of like another variant of the Azov. It's pretty much
not
the
nice guys.
paramilitary group of thugs that are associated with the Svoboda party, or the other big Nazi party was the Pravi sector.
Yeah.
And so the people who run these operations have been deputy prime ministers, deputy premiers, deputy heads of security. So even though the elected officials of the Kiev parliament are not openly Nazi per se, what you got to do is look at all of the deputy ministers, the people running the civil service, who are running the military, who are not necessarily elected but appointed. And that's where you start getting, and it's been like that since 2013, 2014. Well, since the coup, that's where you start getting the Andrei Parubis, who was the Speaker of the House, leading Nazi head of the Pravi sector, the right sector party for a very long time.
Right. So these are people they couldn't put into the total front positions because they're so obviously Nazis and a little bit controversial, but they put them all into the deep state positions.
Exactly. And so they still have to try to maintain an aura of PR, public relations, for the international audience to justify pouring billions of dollars into getting the Ukrainians to fight to the last Ukrainian, that's where the truth resides about the Western intention. And that's what Lindsey Graham directly said in an interview just last month, that, we're going to get them to fight to the last Ukrainian. You really care about these people, sure.
Really easy to say when you're talking about somebody else's people.
Exactly.
So let's
but just quick, as far as Putin, that's the whole thing, right? Like in Russia, that's what everything I just said about Zelensky and the banning of media, banning of political parties, the assassination of opponents, the embrace of fascism, and the being run by oligarchs. All of that is what they say basically about Putin in our Western synthetic media. Now, if you actually look at it, nothing's of the case. There's no political parties as such that are banned in Russia. There's a lot of opposition voices in Russian media that complain all the time about Putin. You got all sorts of groups. And then the fact that they have like Navalny, who's in prison. Well, Navalny was directly caught on camera with his right-hand man arranging, basically trying to get more money from an MI6 operative running out of the British embassy to support his democracy movement, which had already been openly bankrolled by George Soros since at least 2008 or 2007 even. The guy is a complete, Western CIA front insurgent who's been working to try to create a color revolution, overthrow of Putin, and a reinstallation of the type of policy that we saw when Soros was still running Russia back in the 90s under Yeltsin. They were trying to go
Navalny is someone that Putin's put in prison?
Yeah, he's like a young Soros, young reformer type of George Saakashvili type of character who's down for corruption, bribery, and other things.
Say no more. I got to say, since getting out into this latest wave of stuff over the last few years and times 10 meeting you, I got a whole new view of color revolutions, that's for sure.
Yeah, I never really appreciated it until recently either. I mean, it's not something that I think it was only in 2014 that I started really paying attention and trying to figure out, like, well, what the hell is this thing?
Yeah, Arab Spring and white helmets and all this stuff. They all sounded like really good stories at the time. Boy, wow, it's not that. It's like economic hitman stuff, except just organized to get the people to kind of do it for you. And anytime now I see that stuff going on in Iran, as soon as I heard that thing in Iran, they beat up some girl or something, and now the people are in the streets, I was like, okay, color revolution. And of course, can't remember what they gave it a name and everything. They always come up with a name, the chrysanthemum revolution or whatever.
Yeah. No, it's using very simplistic neuro-linguistic programming techniques, social media. I mean, they're very synthetic forms of regime change operations, and it's like they would prefer to do it that way to give the veneer of a democracy movement rather than bombing a country.
Yeah,
they'd rather not bomb the country because that makes them look extra bad.
Yeah.
But if you could get the country's own people who have been this only works really when you have economic despair. If you have economic abundance, you can't get it, which is why they weren't able to get a Bolshevik revolution in the United States. back in the 1918, 1919, 1920, there was like a lot of effort to try to overthrow the U.S. government the way that they had done for the Romanovs in Russia. And it was all bankrolled by the Round Table movement, leading figures around Lord Milner, Jacob Schiff, Max Weber, the guys who had set up the Federal Reserve just a little bit earlier as a financial coup in 1913. These were all the figures who were bankrolling the worst elements of the Bolsheviks, which worked in Russia because you had such economic disparity and despair amongst a big chunk of the youth that had a lot of nihilism, no sense of the future, just a lot of rage bubbling in, and a lot of energy that had to go somewhere. So it was channeled and weaponized to just destabilize the entire government. And that destroyed any of the potential networks within the Russian government that were really working with a strong sense of a longer term solution. They couldn't really operate anymore in that chaos. And
but over here we had way too much financial prosperity. It just couldn't
a lot more abundance.
Kick in. And then you see that you can see the kind of international communists were a very depressed bunch until kind of post-war, and then you get a couple of saints come out. Marcuse, is that his name? Marcuse, who gives you the language to change the evil from capital to privilege, and then gives the keys of the kingdom to identity politics. And then I forget how you always pronounce his name. Freire, the Brazilian, the guy who made pedagogy of the oppressed, and he gave the other key, which is to get this stuff start to be taught in schools. And now we're facing the actual Marxist revolution of society. It doesn't matter how rich we are; they can still get us angry. And now we're looking at a real threat of a colorist revolution, even in our rich countries. Now we got to fight that. They found the smart way to do it.
Well, yeah, they're playing a longer game. But definitely, when you look at the roots of critical race theory and the reforms, like you were alluding to, these found their origins in the ideological, cynical school of it was called the Frankfurt School back in the day. Nominally run by Georg Lukács, who was the Hungarian cultural minister for about 100 days in 1919. Big Bolshevik. And I mean, all of these guys and people like Walter Benjamin and Theodor Adorno, they're really just misanthropic, anti-humanists. They have a lot of self-hate, and all of their creative energy and intellectual energy was devoted to the cause of figuring out how do you get people to wake up to the reality that we are scum that needs to be destroyed like a cancer on Gaia, right? And that means liberating the sick patient from the belief in things like, what stops us from realizing that we're scum cancers? Well, the belief that we have a soul, that belief that there's a God, the belief in the nation state that gives us pride and patriotism, the belief in the family that maintains continuity over generations, that we are tuned as an identity to something on greater than ourselves. All of these things were like the causes of mental dysfunction in the mind of the Frankfurt School freaks, who really wanted to get across that our liberation is in despair. Break people from all of these things that ties them as individual atoms to something broader, and atomize them, cut them off of context so that they just become increasingly hedonistic beasts, in tune with purely their sensual passion as the governing shaper of their identity. And in that despair and lack of sense of meaning and purpose, you will find salvation. And that in their mind was like a world that would then embrace being reset, like a blank slate, now
you're sounding familiar.
Yeah, and just turn on and off the video game and reconstruct humanity in the image of what they think we should be, which is essentially, cows that maybe say a few words.
Consume content, consume next content.
Yeah, we like drug, sex, and video games, virtual reality. That would be like our soma to keep us happy until we get our euthanasia pill, and that's like really their
soma indeed. Looking forward to getting that Huxley video done at some point. That's going to be interesting. Matt and his wife and I are working on a video slowly in the background about whether Huxley was warning us with Brave New World or mapping it out for us. I'm going to try to get us back into the questions here. So I guess what it boils down to for Putin, we touched a bit on free speech, which was my next question. So quickly, for whatever, to whatever degree you know it, what is a quick kind of Putin's history that you know? Because to us, he's a meathead dictator that just killed everybody well enough and scared everybody, and he's like a mob boss. And so, what's his actual history?
Well, I guess his deep history would be that, well, his family, his father suffered a lot. He lost a brother to the Nazis. There were 25 million Russians that died in World War II. He was I think he was a baby, but he had an older brother who died. His father nearly died. There's not really a Russian that wasn't touched by this. It's much deeper in the Russian psyche, the fight against fascism, than it is for much of the West.
25 million.
25 million died. Yeah. Same thing for the Chinese too, right? We don't realize how much this imprints on the zeitgeist of a people, this type of sacrifice and pain. But it was 10 million Chinese died in the course of that war as well with the Japanese.
Yeah.
And Americans as a whole lost, I think, 480,000, which is terrible. But proportionally speaking, it's still a fraction of a fraction.
Yeah.
So
taken
down. He went into the civil service early on. He became part of the intelligence community. He was part of the KGB, as people know, stationed in East Germany until the Soviet Union melted down. At a certain point, he found himself within the entourage of Yeltsin, and he was one of his early patrons was a figure who's actually a really good guy named Yevgeny Primakov. Who was at the time, I think, prime minister or deputy prime minister of Russia, but a very key leading figure of sanity during the precarious, insane years of the 1990s perestroika, which saw basically mass rape and destruction of Russia consciously under people like Strobe Talbot, Rhodes Scholar under Clinton. Al Gore, Victoria Nuland was playing the role of Strobe Talbot's personal assistant, overseeing the growth of a new oligarchical class who would just privatize, when they privatized the Russian former state enterprises. It was a bunch of sociopathic, generally Western-trained elites that would be assigned the role of gobbling up and buying up those state enterprises for pennies on the dollar. And they became the new class of, again, IMF-directed oligarchs in Russia. So when people say, oh, Russian oligarchs, what they often lack in their sense of understanding is that these are oligarchs that were all created by the West, by Wall Street, by London. And that's why when people started cracking down on them, Yeltsin was a mess. He was a guy who, he was a rabid alcoholic. He couldn't do much of anything. And maybe his conscience didn't let him sleep well at night over the fact that he was overseeing the destruction of his entire civilization. So anyway, he was a mess.
He always reminded me of... who's Johnny Carson? Ed McMahon.
Oh, as like an alcoholic mess?
Yeah, just kind of him with the big glowing nose and just like, what is...
I guess if Ed McMahon tried to vie for great, grand strategy, become a political official in charge of people's lives, that would have been terrible. But as an entertainer, that would have been fine. It's like Zelensky. If he would have just stuck as doing stand-up comedy, would have been fine.
Yeah. So yeah. We're over here and we're like, oh, we're so proud to tear down the wall and hey, Roger Waters again. He's playing the wall in Berlin and it's a great time and Scorpions and all that stuff and we're supposed to be excited about it. But meanwhile, everybody in the background they had a different plan. The oligarchs, the Anglo-American bankers, the BIS, they had a whole different plan going, and they swooped in.
Yeah, they swooped in, they took it, and at a certain point, by 1998-99, and Putin even said this in a recent speech, but this is true, that the CIA directly had offices in the highest buildings running the Russian military, the Russian nuclear weapons arsenal, running the former KGB, which is now the FSB. The CIA had openly been running these things with their own offices, coordinated from Washington, in these institutions. So Russia was being taken down. Dick Cheney himself, one of his key associates, was even horrified enough to write a book where he included, I forgot the guy's name, how he was horrified that Dick Cheney didn't want to just de-Sovietize the former Soviet Union. He wanted to de-Russify, to undo the existence of Russia as a civilization.
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with Trotskyism. That's a whole other side conversation, which a lot of these neocons like Cheney, Irving Kristol, and others were former. There's a former Trotskyist underpinning to this, which goes back to again. That's probably another side podcast unto itself, so I won't go there right now. But
Yeah.
So Putin is brought in as a troubleshooter. Primakov is a key guy who is a very insightful strategist. He's the guy who sets the groundwork for what becomes the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in 1999, as well as the G20, to basically give a voice to the targeted nations of the world who are set to be destroyed. Iran, being a key one, China, India, Pakistan. A lot of those Eurasian countries were all targeted for annihilation under the New World Order that was proclaimed in 1992 by Biden, Kissinger, Blair, Bush, everybody. So Primakov worked really hard with his international cohorts to create new institutions that could withstand. Individually, they couldn't survive, but together they could represent a power that could do battle with this oligarchical system, which had taken control at this time of most of the Western transatlantic zone, right? So Putin was brought in as a troubleshooter. There was a certain story that had to do with, I believe it was hookers and booze and probably some drugs and Yeltsin, which
yeah, those rumors persist hard.
Huh?
Those rumors persist hard.
Yeah, and there's some video footage, and so anyway,
Yeltsin
was persuaded to step down, resign, and make room for somebody that wasn't a disaster. This is where Putin is brought in first as prime minister and then as president very quickly. And he immediately goes to work. And his evolution was a slow evolution. It's been 22 years, 23 years that he's been working at this, and he's been growing as a person as well. I think early on he even made an offer to even join NATO. He was like, look, rather than, because it was very, very clear by the late 90s that the policy for NATO was not only to not grow, which was the original promise that NATO wouldn't grow out if the Soviet Union willfully destructs, which is what it did. It was a willful act of self-annihilation, but under the promise that no, we will still respect your security interests. That was what Bush Sr. and his entourage had promised the Russians. That was not the case, and by the late 90s, with the help of Soros, it became clear that no, the idea was to encircle Russia with a missile shield. Lyndon LaRouche even made a video in 1999 called Storm Over Asia, which people can even watch right now on YouTube, which goes through this in 1999. And LaRouche was basically just in communication with his colleagues in Russia who were saying this is very loud and clear. We know what this game is. And also in China, the same thing was going on there too. It's not a new thing. And so Putin said, well, rather than you do this, how about we just join NATO and have a voice within NATO and we'll get around this nuclear war danger that way. So I don't know if that was ever a good idea, but he made the offer, and it's good, I guess, that he did, because it demonstrated the dishonesty of what was controlling the West, acting like they wanted peace when they actually really didn't want Russia anywhere near it. Because their idea, again, was always wipe Russia off the face of the earth and subdue them into a slave colony. Not ironically, exactly how what Germany under Hitler also wanted for Russia as well. Oh, there you go. Storm Over Asia with LaRouche. Yeah, that's it. That's a must watch. You have to. Everyone has to watch that video.
Heard.
1999. It's wild to see what he's talking about. It's exactly what you see today.
Yeah. Wow. I've got to spend more time with this guy. It seems interesting.
Very much so. Very much so.
The fact that he's kind of maligned leads him credence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like these days, I don't know, whoever the media and government are telling you to hate, I'm kind of like, oh, they're probably cool. And in the background, I was trying to find links to Putin claiming CIA basically moved into Russia. And it's so weird, as so often is the case with a lot of these things, you try to Google this stuff. I'm finding multiple headlines that say this. Putin says CIA was running Russia after the fall of the USSR. There's a couple I found. Putin says Russian government was swarming with CIA officers. Click on them, nothing comes up. They redirect, they don't load, stuff like that. And then that's only 2, and the other 20 are Russia meddling in the American election, like not what I searched for.
Right.
And I find this over and over and over again with this stuff.
What browser are you using?
Brave. And I'm
Really,
using their search. But as most of these alternative searches, they're just collating searches, including Google and Bing
Right.
and all this stuff. They don't have the tech to pay for this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like Google search takes up probably 10 million square acres of computers all over the world.
Yeah.
With custom tech and algorithms, so nobody can compete with that. So they're pulling most of their stuff from the same sources who are all pre-editing their search results anyway. I just find this repeatedly. Why do you know a good one that tends to not do that?
No, I don't actually.
Yeah,
I'll
I'll
get
there. It'll just be on the 30th.
Shows up with the Google searches too, almost. So it's,
yeah. You get there. You just got to keep going and keep going and keep digging and keep digging, and eventually the links are out there. Thankfully, they haven't succeeded in controlling every little bit of the internet yet. So then let's continue with Putin quickly. He was civil service, KGB, fall of Russia, fall of Soviet Union. Where is Putin at that time? He was in Yeltsin's government, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, first he was in East. Like I said, he was stationed in the East German area originally, and then he found himself. I forget what his exact position was in Yeltsin's. I think it was in his security detail.
Yeah,
and that put him in a position where he was unfortunately privy to some probably very unsightly entertainment that Yeltsin was prone to. And anyway, like I was saying, some of that stuff was useful as recording to get Yeltsin to step down. Putin is brought in, and he begins to put into motion a new strategy that involves integrating Russia more and more with the Eurasian partnerships. India, increasingly China. They signed their first major friendship agreement between Russia and China in 2001, I want to say, or maybe it was 2000.
Sorry to interrupt. For a historical kind of context, China and Russia had a horrible break under Stalin, right?
It was a little after Stalin, under Khrushchev,
okay,
that it got really ugly. Stalin helped China quite a bit, if you like, regarding the Chinese industrial policy in the early 50s.
Yeah.
Stalin didn't really trust Mao that much, and for good reason in many ways. Mao was a mixed bag. There were he's not as the more you look into things, the more you realize that people that you were trained to think were demonic, evildoers, are not always as bad as you think. There's it's more complicated,
There's always nuance, yes.
Yeah, and there's definitely points of bad in Mao's psychological framework, but at the same measure, not as bad as when you realize the existence of this international financier oligarchy with their penetrations into the Kuomintang party, as well as the Chinese Communist Party, and the inner battles between patriots as well as traitors within his own party, and how so you start appreciating a little bit more of the nuance. All that to say,
So he signs agreements with China. So this was a beginning to repair their relationship, right?
Yeah, that goes a long way to repair their relationship. I mean, China, even under Zbigniew Brzezinski and Kissinger in the late 70s, they were playing a certain role in the Zbigniew design to entrap Russia in this insane war in Afghanistan, with the buildup of Mujahideen, Al-Qaeda operatives. Well, later on, they became known as Al-Qaeda, paid for by U.S. taxpayer money. But at the time, China was still very weak, very beholden to Western diktats if they wanted to have any industry or factories, which they needed because they were super poor. Then they had to play with certain dangerous games, and that involved some nasty stuff with Pol Pot, again, coordinated by the CIA and MI6. It involved supporting radical Mujahideen groups in Afghanistan and in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Through the Uyghur region of the Muslim-dominated ethnicity in the west of China, on the border of Afghanistan.
So the Uyghurs, we're gonna have to hit that on a China follow-up.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because that's a much more nuanced story than I thought.
So
the nature of the deals and conversation he starts having is what can be considered maybe the start of the multipolar alliance.
Yeah, it starts more
modern...
on a security military basis, because Russia still really got their banking system hammered. Economically, they were a basket case still. Their central bank was totally privatized in the 90s under the Soros years.
Yeah.
China was able to fight that off and maintain control of their state-run banking facilities, so they had more economic flexibility, but they still didn't have that much independence economically, because they were still so dependent on selling cheap crap to Western dollar stores. They were the sweatshop cheap labor colony for the world, or the so-called first world. So neither one was very strong on any level, but together they began to just capacity build slowly. India increasingly was playing a positive role, but it was very slow moving. They were still all trying to figure out how to have a positive relationship with the dominant power center of the world, which is Anglo-America. That wasn't really working, but they were still trying, playing the green game, sustainability, trying to do things in order to just be liked, to say that we're playing ball, we're good partners. Please, just they were doing everything to avoid World War III, basically.
Yeah.
But
so we've got Putin making those agreements, and there is a period where Putin's out, isn't there?
There's a period when Medvedev comes in as president and Putin becomes prime minister. But
prime minister, that's right. Yeah,
for 4 years.
So what happened there?
Well, that was just an arrangement that was made. You couldn't legally at the time have more than 2 terms as president anyway. So he did his 2 terms. He couldn't do a 3rd term. And so Medvedev comes in between 2008 and 2013, I want to say, as the president.
So then one does get a bit of a feeling that he can be president at will. Is that due to just his immense, overwhelming popularity, or is it due to him having a rigged voting system?
No, there's an overwhelming support for Putin across Russia. It's quite high. If you get out of Moscow, Moscow and St. Petersburg are 2 metropolitan zones which are very much like liberal New York, culturally, it's a giant vibe, not that different culturally, especially for the young, who never really lived through the hardships of the 90s so much. A lot of the millennials, they're a bit more detached. That's a bit of a dangerous thing. And that's where there's still a lot of cultural colonialism, in Russia. Video game culture is huge, degenerate media, entertainment, like that. It's still very big. Again, not that different from your average Western idiot, dumbed down population. It's not it's not like a bastion of Orthodox Christian values or anything in a lot of these. But again, when you look at across the board, Russia's a big place, and the vast support is huge for Putin. And another thing too, people see that Putin has actually gone to war with a lot of these oligarchs that were built up by by Soros, Clinton's, Newland, the IMF, and so a lot of these oligarchs have actually gone to prison, starting in 2002 when he started really cracking down on some of these figures who had owned like Russian mineral companies and things like that, but wouldn't want to willfully lower their prices in order to accommodate the needs for the nation to grow infrastructure. So in some of these cases, when an oligarch wouldn't play ball by the new rules of the game that he was bringing in, they would basically be told, well, we're going to either confiscate you and renationalize you, as was done with Gazprom, or there's a variety of Russian energy companies that were nationalized. Or we'll, in some cases, if you actually conducted serious crimes, we'll prosecute and put you in jail, which did happen to a variety of leading figures. Or if you want to avoid prison, you could always escape and go to London or Florida, which is what hundreds of these Russian oligarchs did. And even today, you have a place in London called Moscow on the Thames, which is the Russian oligarchs section, where people like Berezovsky went to get sanctuary in his big mansions. And this is where a lot of these guys were basically seen as more valuable dead than alive by their MI6 handlers. And so in London is where you get a lot of the Russians who end up, like Skripal and his poor daughter Yulia ended up, I'm pretty sure they're dead, even though by so-called Novichok, from the Porton Down facility in London, which all media said it was like Russian agents who were sent down to London to kill him for what? Why?
Is this the guy that was irradiated?
He was the guy who touched a bit of Novichok, a neurotoxin on his door handle, and then
Oh God.
this thing is like it kills in like it shuts down basically your ability to breathe in like literally 30 seconds. And they had this stuff when when MI5 was doing the investigation of his house where he was living. They found this all over the door handle and stuff, and it's like if you actually touched that, you wouldn't make it to your driveway. He was walking around with his daughter, eating dinner. They spent like 5 hours walking around London, and then just both passed out in a park. And anyway, this whole like media complex went into work at the certain moment, right, in a coordinated fashion to make it seem like Putin was the guy that oversaw and deployed the death of these useless people who had no role to play in anything. So again, that's where you tend to get like a lot of it doesn't pay to work for MI6 as a stooge. Sometimes they will kill you and then blame the people that they want to overthrow.
Yeah, fascinating. And you're right.
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, it just again, I get so much of these interactions right through Flipboard, Twitter, where I'm trying to post something that is at least some kind of counter view to the mainstream media, and they just all come in there. Yeah, all right, Boris, you Russian bot. I mean, I got to say, the faith in the left for what is capable with bot technology is incredible. Because like I'm a bot that has like a fully verifiable chain of like of who I am, what I do. I got a YouTube channel with my picture on it. You can watch me, but I'm a bot. And they constantly go to this that Putin is a puppet of the oligarchs.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason he's there is he's bolstered by the oligarchs, which, as you said before, that's why Zelensky's in Ukraine. I mean, the deflection is insane, absolutely insane. So generally speaking, it's safe to say there isn't a path of destruction that keeps Putin in power or put him in power. It's just kind of good old that thing we call elections.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so question number 2, it only took us 50 minutes to get through one question. We're doing good. Is
My
free
problem is I like context, and yeah.
Well, but that's why
I'm
we
not
bring
good
you
at
on,
soundbites.
man. I'm ribbon, but that's why we bring you on. Is free speech allowed in Russia?
Sure. Yeah, you can even have like a gay pride. You could have a gay pride parade. They have them. Those things happen in Moscow. You can protest a variety of things. Right now, I think a law was passed around the Ukraine situation, specifically the special military operation, where in Russia they passed a rule saying you can't call it a war per se. I find that might be a little heavy-handed.
That you
I
can't
don't
call Ukraine a war?
that you can't call the Ukraine conflict a war. I don't know to what degree they're still enforcing that so much right now, but
That is heavy-handed.
it's definitely been capitalized upon by a lot of the Soros-connected sort of human, because color revolutionary tactics always use free speech and human rights as the to pull the heartstrings of the audience. So anytime you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And so you had coordinated tactics deployed by young idiots who went out in a provocative way with signs saying stop the war, Putin's a dictator in Moscow. And they did it in such a provocative way that they had coordinated like their cell phones to only film like an hour later after they were like really causing shit.
Right.
Then and like the cops were like working hard not to do anything, but they antagonized. Then finally, when the cop was like, "Okay, finally, that's it," like, and they dragged a few of these young people away. That's when all of the, they started clicking record and uploaded it to YouTube and stuff, which is then what was picked up by all the Western press to make it seem like, oh yeah, Russia is like cracking down on all free speech and protest. And it's like, there's a lot of context missing. There's a lot of narrative reframing in those, how we were being manipulated to perceive those images. But overall, no, there's protest. There's, again, gay pride. There's no law against being gay in Russia. That's what we're being told. There is laws that say you can't proselytize LGBT stuff. So you can't go and promote it in the media, but you can do whatever you want in your bedroom. You can do whatever you want at a park bench. Well, I mean, within certain reasonable constraints, to
What's what's the other side of the story then? If you're familiar with what happened with Pussy Riot in Russia, with some of them getting arrested.
Yeah, well, Pussy Riot is a bunch of, well, as the name implies, it's, I mean, it's like a young female band of heavy metal punk rock band that barged into a Russian church, started tearing stuff down, throwing over, like they were causing destruction of private property. And you have laws in Russia about destroying property, especially in churches, which are, unlike us, their churches are still respected. And
Right.
they got arrested. They got arrested for that, and they did it in a very publicized way. So there was a very controlled, filming of their whole operation where they went in, they sang their very satanic music in the church, and after causing being a shit disturber, they got arrested. And since then, they've been darlings of Anthony Blinken and Washington. So they recently this week the lead singer met with Anthony Blinken around supporting a decolonization of Russia project, which the National Endowment for Democracy is funding. So she's at this point become a complete, like the Pussy Riot clan has become a CIA darling group, which has been used by handlers that don't really care about them or Russian people or freedom. That's
right. Okay.
Yeah.
And they're just like, yay.
What you're saying. So I mean, it's not that the LGBT stuff or the feminist stuff isn't allowed. It's just there's certain laws in place, obviously, that are a little bit more old school, Western old school, which is cool. That's fine. I can appreciate that.
Yeah, like I don't think you can marry if you're a guy, I don't think you can marry your husband in Russia. I don't think you can adopt. I don't think you can adopt kids as well. I think so. I think there's still constraints on those things. But
Right.
again, like the idea that you can't be gay, you can't engage in the things that gay people do, you can't go to gay bars. They have those. That's BS. There's,
Right.
so yeah, it's like maybe. I don't think that that's necessarily that bad of a thing. Like, I mean,
we're uncomfortable a bit talking about it. Things have gone so far here, but to some degree, that is what center conservative people here are fighting for, whether they realize it or not. Just to get a couple fences back up so that this stuff doesn't just wildly take over and run out of control.
It's
to
a
the
slippery
point of
slope,
where, well, that's what we warned, and it's really funny. As I get older and I watch this stuff, and when I thought like my dad was like an old Baptist asshole, kind of saying, well, you can't have gay marriage because then they'll just take over everything, right? And it's like, well, man, as I get older, it's not that that's exactly correct, but man, it feels a lot like that.
It's not the amount of abuse, because at the end of the day, like I personally, I'm not against like gay marriage.
No, and nor it's anyone here. I doubt anyone in our chat really gives a shit about it. But
there's so many like messed up heterosexual couples anyway that screw up their kids. Like if you can get two well-rounded people of the same sex who want to actually treat their kid with love and get married and adopt and whatever, fine, like more power to them. But
that was one of my thoughts back then, was like, are you sure you guys want this?
Yeah.
Like, look how it's working out for us. Are you sure you want to do this? And I thought the best, not a counter argument, the best proposal that I ever heard put out, it was a Canadian politician. I doubt it was Harper. Canadian politician just said, let's go ahead with this, but don't take the word marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Make your own name, whatever you guys want. You pick it.
Yeah.
You come up with it, but don't take the word marriage, so that people who think it's one thing get to keep it, and you get to keep your thing. I mean, obviously, what was civil union was the word that was around back in the day. That's obviously kind of clunky, but I don't know. Gays are renowned as being a creative bunch. They come up with your own name.
That's one thing to discuss, but I don't really know. Like, because then the question is like, are we all equal? Like, there's a
sure, right?
Thing, but I agree, if marriage is something that derives from,
it was a compromise to keep both sides a little bit happy. Like everybody gets to keep a little bit of something. I thought that was genius.
The whole point that I guess is troubling is just the intention, the existence of social engineers who want to use every single inch that they can win in order to ultimately deconstruct all of civilization and turn us into a Soylent Green post-truth society of androgynous everythings. That's what they want to create as an ideal. So as long as that intention has a lot of political force shaping the levers of policy, education, culture, and everything else, then it's like for example, here's another hot button topic: is euthanasia. Am I
Oh
am I
yeah.
intrinsically against all euthanasia in all cases? No, I can imagine a variety of cases where I'd be okay with that. But it's like in the same measure, when I look at who it is who's pushing it, their intention is not to have the right extended to people who are in insufferable pain with no hope of salvation, and who can freely choose on their own free will the desire to do that. That's not the intention. The intention is to always extend to the point that, look at today in Canada, we've already opened the door. We did the C-14 thing a few years ago, and now they're announcing that as of March of next year, they will extend this to mature minors who can bypass parental consent as long as they get two doctors to say, yeah, you're depressed enough to get the suicide pill. We sign off, and a parent doesn't even need to know if you're a mature minor. What is a mature minor? They don't define
A
what that
mature minor.
is.
Well, he seemed pretty mature, he plays chess. He can kill
Yeah.
himself. So yeah, in stories like, is that Dutch girl or Danish or what was she that was all over the world recently? They just killed herself, had enough of everything, and with the permission of the state, killed herself.
Yeah,
And
taxpayer money. Yeah, they got a kid in Vancouver right now who's just read an article. He's 20 years old. He's got a bad stomach disease, gets a lot of pain, can't sleep well, and they signed off. Two doctors said, okay, you're in enough pain and to kill yourself. He's having a big party, his going away party this month. And yeah, he's not going to wake up next month. He's going to go into one of these medical assisted dying clinics and not come out again.
Oh shit! And so like you're saying, what is the real end game here, though? And then you say medical assisted dying clinic, and now do you think that there's going to be one of those in every city, and people are going to be lining up for this the same way that as soon as we start talking about putting a whole bunch of attention on transgenderism, then all of a sudden everybody's transgender and going for surgeries, and all of it's just okay. And if you question it.
Yeah, look at the rates of depression and suicide in people who have gone through transgender surgery. I mean, I was looking at some of the studies that have been done, just tracing out the amount of regret and suicide and heavy drug use in people who were pushed to do this without their full understanding of what was shaping their original depression and malaise with their own gender. And then they're, groomed and conditioned by a variety of psychologists, psychiatrists at their school, in the medical practice, they're all activist practitioners who have been installed to influence the minds of gullible young people to start taking hormone blockers, other things. But
as that gets pushed, more people do it. But the thing with what we're talking about, euthanasia, there's no regret. You don't get to regret this.
Yeah,
you don't even get that out of it. You're just gone. And when this is going to be it's pushed by the same people that are coming, like UNESCO and eugenicists.
Yeah,
we're talking about eugenics, just a faster way to kill people. The Cove Channel, hey Cove Channel, Greta killed herself, Sweden. Oh yeah, I'm not going to comment on that because she's not a minor.
I think she looks like a minor. They're probably giving her some hormone blockers. Or
Yeah. They blocked her puberty. Okay, I'm going to make a failed attempt to get us back on topic. Oh yeah, so free speech. I was going to say that as I've been going through and researching stuff, I have a couple times, especially when I'm trying to find out who's funding this website that I'm reading, has led me to discover multiple political parties in Russia. They're totally opposed to Putin, and they're not being hunted down and killed or burned alive or anything. There's multiple political parties that run. They don't do well, but they run. So I just wanted to throw that in on the free speech topic. Next question. From Western reports, Russian military seem inept, underfunded, and archaic. Is this true?
No, they're saying that because Russia is not getting the Desert Storm results of destroying Ukraine, and so they're basically taking that empirical data, spinning it the way we talked at the beginning of this show, and just saying that's because they're incompetent, inept, all of these other things. And they're no, I mean Russia has unveiled advanced technology in the form of advanced like generation 3.5 hypersonic missiles, underwater drone delivery systems that could deliver even a nuclear powered warhead if they wanted to, nuclear powered rockets that could like fly across through the orbits of the Earth, around the Earth several times before deciding to go and hit their target. Like there's so many things. Even China has got much more advanced hypersonics, and their military is not anywhere nearly in line as you would think of the United States, which has nominally, quantitatively, a much bigger military. Their budget is something like 10 times more than that of Russia and China combined. But China
Yeah.
has demonstrated, and they did even a demo of one of these hypersonics that went all around the Earth and just missed their target by a fraction, whereas the U.S. tried to do a similar display of their own tech about a week later and couldn't even get it out of the silo. Like it crashed immediately upon launch. Russia is even more advanced. They began unveiling, like Putin gave us a 2018 speech where he unveiled like a lot of these delivery systems, Kinzhals, other things that they had been working on over the course of the last 10, 20, or even 20 years. When in response to the obvious full spectrum dominance agenda of the West to encircle them. And again, what's the idea of full spectrum dominance? For those who don't know, full spectrum dominance is the logic that was crafted in the Rand Corporation with the idea that a nuclear monopoly could be had by one singular power, meaning the United States, which would maintain first strike hegemony over all of their rivals, basically Russia and China, by encircling them, right? And by being able to take down all of their response capabilities, you would get them to submit to a one world government, give up their claims to sovereignty. That was the idea.
Yeah.
There would be minimal collateral damage amongst some of the European countries, but that would be deemed acceptable collateral damage of limited nuclear war. This came about with Zbigniew Brzezinski originally with his flexible response doctrine, again from Rand in the late 70s. So Putin unveiled, he basically demonstrated that this is impossible. This will never happen. Russia has an advanced military capability, which the West is afraid to talk about. But when you actually look at the rundown of Russia's military production systems, it is outstandingly powerful. So economically, their banking system has been crippled by the West, which still has a big influence over their central bank, which has been preventing them from releasing the types of credit policy that they need that could have like a Russian version of the New Silk Road or the Belt and Road Initiative for the development of the Arctic, which Russia and Putin has spoken about his desires to have a real mega project approach to the development of the Russian Arctic, but the credit is not being made available by traders installed in the finance sectors.
So you're saying Russia's own central bank is working against its own country?
Yes.
What a shocker! You're blowing my mind, man. Can you imagine that happening in Canada and America? Oh wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
would it be fair to say, Matt, that just the simple fact alone that Russia has nuclear capabilities makes them an elite military force?
Yeah, Obama called them a regional power back in 2012.
Oh my God.
Delusional. Like it's obviously a global player, global power. They got 2,000 tactical nuclear missiles. Some of the big boys they still have too. Yeah, they're a global power. And again, with the delivery capabilities that they have, that I just went through, and there's a lot more to these powers. They could receive some bad hits with the U.S. system installed in NATO countries like Poland and Romania on their border, or that's also why they saw it as unacceptable that Zelensky acquire nuclear weapons the way Zelensky's been begging since February 20th of this year to receive nuclear weapons. Poland too, but these things could easily be done in any NATO country. So they could get in some hits against Russia, but Russia has demonstrated that no matter what their computer models tell them, Russia will be able to annihilate every single like country that instigates this, from London to Washington and Belgium and France and everybody in between. So like give up on that illusion. But nut jobs as they are running the Western,
as they always have done in their own way. Russia is the graveyard of empires. Everybody's tried over and over again.
Yeah,
over
my
the years.
concern is nuclear weapons, though. I mean, we've never had that in human history before, so
No,
I don't know
that's
what
a
this
different
crazy
game. Yeah,
phenomenon of oligarchy, like of what the oligarchy's mindset can do when it has these toys to
my huge
destroy.
concern is after watching Nord Stream that they'll set off a nuke in Kiev.
Well, me too.
America
I
will
mean,
set off a nuke in Kiev and then go, oh, dirty Putin.
well, it's like
And
what we were talking about with some of anybody who's a puppet of the West is right there. Like your life insurance policy is it should be like you should be paying 1,000 times more for your premiums at that point, right? And Kiev as a whole has become a puppet of the West, and they might be at a certain point deemed more useful, obliterated by some inside job manufactured by the West, and
Oh,
then
we
blamed
know
by
they'll
Russia.
dump them.
Huh?
They'll dump them. They'll dump them. I mean,
That's scary. Yeah.
yeah.
How will they dump them at that point becomes a very big point of concern.
Yeah, and with the success of taking away the counter voices over this past couple of years, you just let your nuke off in a building in Kiev, and there's no chance. There's no chance to find out that it was them. I mean, they just destroyed a pipeline from Russia to, where does it come into land? Denmark.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. They're not in the news anymore. It's just gone. This is unheard of. So you need like a submarine to do this operation.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
the
50 meters of the pipeline have been obliterated. 50 meters were obliterated. I thought it was like a little bomb that like caused a leak. No, it's 50 meters. That line are gone. Like that's gone for years. Even if
with
they want to
three
rebuild
separate
it.
explosions that set off seismometers all over,
Yeah.
and in guarded waters over one of the most important constructions going on in Europe. The consummation of like maybe decades, years
Yeah.
and years of
At least 8 years of
important
work. Yeah.
talks. I mean, leading up to it, just to decide to do it was a huge thing in Europe. Massive, kind of like here with our pipeline in America that got shut down. A huge,
Right.
huge deal,
Yeah.
and it gets bombed by an unknown third party. Sweden and Germany basically say they know who did it, but guess what? The results of our investigations threaten national security, so we can't release them.
Yeah. Exactly.
If they knew it was Russia, they would release it tomorrow.
Yep.
So seeing that, obviously just about anything's on the table, and with you just stop talking about it, it goes away. And over in Russia, I'm sure they're like, obviously America blew up the Nord Stream, but there's none of that gets over here. So you just set off a suitcase nuke in a building in Kiev and say that Putin did it, and now it justifies anything. Absolutely anything could be justified at that point.
Well, that would be terrible. Yeah, that's a high point of concern.
Scary times.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so, and I also wanted to remind everyone that what a great movie Top Gun Maverick was, and that the almost futuristic planes that they had to face, the enemy in those are real Russian planes that float in space and flip around. Yeah, it's the latest Soviet fighter.
Well, and Russian planes are on another level.
Insane. They're insane. They're not bogged down by the bullshit they are in America, where the F-22 takes 14 years to make.
Yeah. F-35 is like, what is that at this point? Yeah, no, I mean, it's like they learned from like the hummingbird. Like they can stop, they can go up, down, sideways, backwards. They could do all sorts of. You can see some of the displays of some of these Russian jets just for entertainment value on YouTube, and the quality of thinking of your pilots is on another level. It's in another domain to anything we have ever encountered. You have to be so educated and be trained to think in a very creative, rigorous manner to be able to fly one of these machines. And
and in a military that's seen more action over the years and feels more of a threat than ours does.
Here's actually a really good point. In terms of like the weakness of Russia, their incompetence of the Russian military. Look, the U.S. had been trying to supposedly stop Al Qaeda for the past 20 years after shock and awe in Afghanistan and Iraq. where we killed like I think something like 3 million civilians or something. Like it's crazy in terms of like 900,000 by direct violence, but then in terms of like the destruction of infrastructure, water management, sanitation, medical infrastructure, it's easily 3 to 4 million who have died since then, on top of famine and other things. So we've been pouring something like $9 trillion worth of armaments, weapons, military bombing for 20 years on Afghanistan, a country which is using the technology level of like what we had in 1342. They get their ass kicked. They tried to get Syria, a relatively weak government, regime changed at the same time as they're supposedly trying to stop ISIS, ignoring the fact that the CIA is supporting and funding ISIS and arming them, ignoring that. And then Russia goes in with an army that is 10% of the power of the United States. 10% of that power goes into Syria, not only stops the regime change, but then also obliterates all the strongholds that ISIS had enjoyed. When you look at the maps of ISIS's dominance in Syria up until Russia's entry in September 2015, they lost like 95% of their wins in territory. Like Assad was ready to be toppled and destroyed if it hadn't been for Russia, which totally turned the tides. Again, so the competence, the level of being able to deploy qualitative strikes with an intention to actually destroy the enemy instead of the U.S., who would, give forenotice to, they would like bomb at the same time every day. So all of these different Al-Qaeda groups knew exactly when they had to go back in their caves.
Oh, so it's all set for prime time back home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so that Brian Williams can be in the chopper.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I do.
Oh, and that anyone will take these people seriously again. And the guy gets like, he has to do a mea culpa one night, and then he's back on the news reporting you from America's most trusted news source, NBC. This asshole that lied about his war experience. Unbelievable, right? So, I mean, and everything we're talking about here tonight, but this stuff's easy to look up. I'm going to share in the background while we're talking, going to share a couple sites that anyone that is interested in at least getting the opposing viewpoint, because they banned all Russian YouTube channels and media everywhere here. One is the New Atlas. What's this guy's name, Matt?
Brian Berlitek.
Brian Berlitek lives in Thailand, former U.S. military.
Yes.
Yeah. And so he does almost daily updates, looking deep into what's going on the ground there. To prove he's not a shill, he reports basically only using pro-U.S., pro-Ukrainian sources, except points out things like you can send them 30 tanks, but they're not going to figure out how to use them for 6 months.
Yeah.
Things like this, logical things that we all have to know. And the other being the Duran, another excellent site.
Alex Mikulis and Alex Christopher, they do a good job every day.
Double Alex's.
Yeah.
This one's talky, more talky, and more Alexander talking.
Yeah.
But he's excellent. I don't know what his background is, but he talks like a civil servant. He talks like a diplomat.
He is, and I think
excellent insight.
He's advised various government ministers in Greece and other countries over the years. So he's
what is his background? Do you know?
I just know he's advised various political officials, but I don't really know exactly the details.
Right, but his insights are deep. He predicted the downfall of the new what do they call them over there? Would be the Minister of Finance over here, but in England.
Oh, Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Chancellor. He predicted it. I managed to catch a show, and he said something's up in Britain. They're going after Liz Truss and African named Chancellor. Can't think of his name off the top of my head. Less than 48 hours later, it happened.
Yeah,
and he
another site that's pretty good is what's his name? Jackson Hickle.
Oh, that rings a bell.
That's
the name of his.
No, the site, the show is called The Dive with Jackson Hickle.
Okay.
He's pretty competent, and I enjoy his general compositional method. And another one is Redacted with Clayton Morris and his wife, whose name is escaping me. Redacted. That's also very good.
Okay. I'm going to share all this stuff because, our people are really going to need to see this stuff. I recognize the guy's face. Oh, he's on gee, it's so late at night. I worked all day, my brain's fried. The guy used to be on Young Turks but is cool now. Comedian.
Is that his background, really? Young Turks? He broke away? Huh. Okay, I didn't know.
No, not him. Older guy. Oh, come
Yeah, I know.
on.
I forget
Yeah. I just can't think of his name. Oh, Jimmy Dore.
Jimmy Dore, yeah.
Jimmy Dore. Are you aware of him, Matt?
I know Jimmy Dore, yeah, but you're saying
Yeah.
Jimmy Dore was involved with Young Turks?
Yes, that's where he started. A full-on lefty. He co-hosted with those other two idiots and stuff, but quickly
Good
grew
for him.
tired of grew tired of their bullshit. Just like
Ruben.
Ruben.
Yeah.
Ruben and Dore from Young Turks.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Oh,
That's right.
Okay, I appreciate them a lot more now.
Jimmy Dore
is
he's increasingly becoming clearer and clearer headed. He's like watching many of these former lefties, especially in the entertainment sphere, that are becoming much more awake each year, growing year, to the point that his videos are often, they're lying to you about Ukraine. Putin made sense when he said this. And Jackson Hinkle is one of the guys that he almost always has in the background, where he has rapport with and conversation with. I knew I recognized this guy, so that's good. I'm subbed to him. And the other one you said was
Redacted with Clayton Morris.
Redacted.
Yeah, Redacted. That's also on YouTube. They haven't gotten taken off of YouTube yet.
Yeah, we're all just biding our time, aren't we?
Yeah,
but. We're all building on Rumble, and we're live on Rumble right now. Everybody, make sure you're on Rumble, because we know it's all coming to an end. At some point, they're just going to pull the plug on all of us.
Yep.
But Rumble we're seeing tremendous growth there. We just recently we're having the hearings in Canada, the official mandatory hearings you have to have after calling the Emergency Act into power. And our favorite little bugbear, Zexi Lee, who is this seems to be manufactured personality that sued the truckers and promoted heavily by the media. She just gave testimony, and a group of curious Twitter users that run kind of a radio show on Twitter found our video. And on Rumble, we've gone from, it had about 1,500 views from the initial release in February, and we're well over 10,000 now. After these guys found it.
That was a fantastic little video. I just watched it last night, and you got the case across pretty effectively.
Yeah, thanks, man. Even though I didn't know what the case was, but I think I got the case across that there's something fishy going on.
Yeah, there's a big question mark over this anomaly. Like, you don't have the answers. You can't have the answers, but you can know that there are no answers that are made available to some important questions. Like, why doesn't she seem to exist before February 2022? Like, what's
with a reminder of how dangerous pretty innocent little liars like this can be.
Yes.
At the end with the Iraqi ambassador's daughter there.
Right. Oh, that was a powerful way to end it too. Yeah, that was a really good lesson.
Which is, I think, for people in our position, centered, nuanced thinkers, that we get to that point quickly. They're like, look, hold on, we've got like a manufactured personality that's being shoved down our throats that might be lying. Where can that lead, and why, that could lead to war. Okay, so I'm opposed to it. I'm being lied to, and that can be used as propaganda, and I don't want to go there. Anyway, my point was, Rumble is really popping. Our videos that we've done together, Matt, more views on Rumble than on YouTube.
Yeah, I think we got for our conspiracy theory video, we did we're at 45,000 or so, 40,000 views on Rumble, which is pretty damn good.
Yes,
another 5,000-6,000 on BitChute, and we didn't put it up on YouTube, but
the hell with them. So there's an example right there. You didn't even put it on YouTube. You get so turned off, and I can remember it's February 24th they started, and by March 1st we had emails as YouTube users saying, if you dare to question the fact that this is a war of aggression by Russia, your channel will be deleted. So it's stuff like that, and you got a strike, right? And we got live streams taken down for questioning vaccines and stuff like that. And it's just it's a matter of time. So everybody's got to keep up on Rumble. Yeah, Cove Channel. There you go. Pulled you up on Rumble. All right. So I've subscribed to Redacted. I recognize the guy. He looks very LA tan, maybe a little bit of facial surgery.
I don't know. I don't know.
Questions?
All right. I'm joking, of course. Okay, I think we got one question left. Sanctions are intended to isolate and strangle Russia. Can they and others like China, Iran, and India survive without the West? If so, how?
Well, if it was 5-6 years ago, I'd say no. But when you look at what they've been able to build up over the past few years, increasingly, yeah, it looks like they've created a boat that can float. Whereas the West, first of all, when people talk about the international community has like been isolated from Russia, all they're talking about is Europe, the USA, Canada, and Australia. That's all they mean. The representing maybe 25% of the population of the world. The actual 80% of the world has in no way committed to not working with Russia, which is like most of Africa, Latin America, Mexico, a lot of Eastern Central European countries, Asia. Like,
and everybody's happy to buy gas.
Yeah, like India. Russia has made a point. They're more than happy to sell gas to the West. And Putin just gave a speech 6 days ago at an energy conference, basically saying, "Look, the U.S. has brought this on. Europe has brought this onto themselves. All of the gas that they need and they want, they can have, but they just have to simply turn on the tap. It's up to them. And we're more than happy to bring this gas via the lines in Turkey. It just requires the building of a couple of distribution centers. But the lines are already built through Turkey. The TurkStream lines exist." That could easily be upgraded and supply all of the needs, all of the abundance needed to not just get Europe through winter, but far beyond, and repower their industrial needs so that they don't lose what dwindling economic power they currently are clinging on to, and just turn on the tap. That's all. But the U.S. and I say the U.S. in the loosest of terms because anybody who's followed me or my writings knows that I've made the point that the U.S. has been under the full control of a foreign entity, which is actually centered in the city of London. It's the same British Empire, which has been controlling the United States, especially since the murder of Bobby Kennedy. And this is what was behind the destruction of the 2020 elections.
It's like the U.S. just succeeded in temporarily kicking out the Brits.
Yeah, they pushed back. I mean, they actually had something viable still alive. I didn't think it was there. I was a bit surprised that there was some resistance that was still functional in the U.S. When Hillary was defeated and Trump was brought in for all of his faults. He was not part of the script. So that was good, and it's still a factor, that revived a certain forgotten cultural dynamic inside of the Americans who tend to find themselves in the Republican Party at this point. That's the only thing legitimate at this point. If the U.S. is not going to go into hell, a fascist hell, it's going to be because this particular grouping is able to get their shit together and think in a more clear-headed way. But there's
Agreed.
nothing else.
What's the mechanism? What is Putin selling to his people as the path that it's okay if the West sanction us? Like how are we going to survive?
I mean, he's already made up for all of the lost sales to India has increased their energy imports from Russia by 8-fold, fertilizer imports by 9-fold since last year, same time.
Ukraine is the basket of fertilizer, right?
Yeah, Ukraine is definitely.
Yeah.
So is Russia. Russia and Ukraine number 1 and number 2 of the world.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, Russia is making up their losses by sales of discounted gas to India, to China, big time, Iran, even Saudi Arabia, which has a lot of gas. They're still buying discounted gas, and then they're selling it to the European markets and the world markets at 8-9 times the value that they paid.
And then isn't this a path as well with Nord Stream gone? Now they've amped up TurkStream. So then Turkey will be getting a direct pipeline of juice from Russia, but since they're NATO, they're getting juice from all over. They're going to blend all the juice up into a basket and then sell it back to idiot Europeans who have enacted these sanctions, but they won't even be able to tell if it's Russian gas.
I mean, there's so many levels of absurdity here. Like, really, I mean, I think the European population as a whole is really losing their stamina over the like they're suffering from Ukraine exhaustion syndrome right now. You know, like as much as the elites who are very detached from the people are trying to push down the throats of the people who are gearing up for winter without using heating. Like 1 out of 4 British citizens between the age of 18 and 40 are saying in a recent survey that they're going to try to go the winter without using heat. Something like 60% of the pubs are saying that they're very, very seriously considering going bankrupt because they can't suffer to pay the abysmal energy prices that they're expected to pay for so you're going to lose what little entrepreneurs have survived the 2 decimating years of COVID are now looking at this down the eye. I mean, it's no way. So
isn't it wild to see how people will stick with leaders who promise nothing but suffering?
It's wild. I mean,
stick with us. We'll take away all of your freedoms. We'll take away all of your energy. We'll take away everything that you hold dear, but you'll do it for the greater cause, which is, what is it? They don't even have to say what we're heading towards.
No, I mean,
just suffering.
You need to get some strong leadership right now that can absorb and direct the energy of the masses who are already coming out, and they're going to come out in greater numbers and amplitude across France, Germany, England, you name it. The Netherlands, we've seen already some interesting displays with the Canadian flag as an organizing beacon amongst a lot of the Dutch farmers, which I find puts a smile on my face. This is going to get really loud. And if you can't get anybody with a little bit of some cojones to be able to take a stand and provide leadership to this energy in a constructive way that involves simply making a policy-based demand to accept Russia's offers to sell Russian gas at a time of need and diffuse the situation in Ukraine, which can easily be done. Easily, just simply acknowledge that Ukraine will not be a member of NATO. That's all Russia's ever wanted with the Minsk I, Minsk II agreements that France and Germany worked very hard with Russia to accommodate. Just agree they won't be part of any military bloc, whether pro-Russian or pro-Europe, neither one. Acknowledge that Crimea and the 4 new republics are now parts of Russia. Acknowledge that. That's it. That's all you have to do. And then
to me, when I looked into it, the offer was actually very graceful from Russia to stay neutral.
Yeah.
At this point, that's all we're asking, even though they've been encroached upon for damn near 70 years, and they're losing ground, and these missiles are being moved in. NATO is encroaching. Even under those circumstances, Russia was just like, we ask that this zone, including Ukraine, just stay neutral. Don't join you don't have to join our bloc, which seems to me diplomatically quite generous. Right? So so to get back to just quickly, I mean, we got to end soon. The package that they're working on, generally, those kind of the multipolar alliance is something that we hear a lot about with both your publications, people like the Duran and New Atlas put this word out there. So, I mean, that, I believe, to me is kind of an encapsulation of what these leaders are trying to sell to the world, to say, don't worry, we don't need to be part of the West's hegemony anymore. What is the multipolar alliance, quickly, and how does it going to work for those people? And us, maybe?
Anybody who's on the Anglo-American kill list as far as nations that are not playing ball with the New World Order. So basically, the unipolar was the idea of the New World Order proclaimed in 1992 with the collapse of the Soviet Union. Before that, it was a bipolar world. Either you're communist or you're capitalist. Pick a side, and then you had the neutral, the non-aligned movement countries around India. But it was really bipolar. And then when the Soviets ended, it became the unipolar age was now here. It was end of history. So unipolar meant one pole, one center of command that would shape the system as a system. That system would be defined around certain protocols. Number one, the presumption of a closed system, that all that exists at one frame in time and that is monopolized by whatever dominant forces are controlling the unipole would be managing diminishing returns in a world of scarcity. So scarcity would always increase as freedom would always decrease for the individuals within the system moving around, right? Trying to like eke by. So that system philosophically is rooted in the same ancient practice of feudal empires that we've ever seen. No different from the days of the worst of Babylon. Population management, divide and conquer, get the slaves to fight, keep people as dumb as possible, cut them off of their cultural heritage. All of these things, not new, nothing new under the sun.
Right.
And then increasingly you have the multipolar orientation is the belief in sovereign nation states. So the idea that that international law should be defined around a multitude of polarities, meaning that each nation state is a polarity. Some obviously have more and less, others less amplitude based upon their economic might and power. But the point is you have to respect, as the UN Charter even enshrines as sacred, the concept of each individual sovereign nation must always be respected. And you could never have one nation conduct an act of aggression against a neighboring country. That's illegal. If the UN Charter was actually followed, that would be the effect. The problem is it's not. So the multipolar idea is just that sovereign nation states have to be the defining character of progress and mutual development, security interests, other things. China, India, Russia, increasingly even Iran, Saudi Arabia, who are two enemies, are increasingly finding themselves on the same orientation towards wanting to have a future and not wanting to sacrifice their ancient civilizations on some Gaia altar of a great reset.
Yeah.
So that's where you get a convergence of general self-interest around win-win cooperation. So it's an open system.
Yeah.
Versus the closed system idea that I said, diminishing returns, defines the closed system. The open system idea is based on the concept that the resources that exist today to sustain the population levels that we currently have are not absolute. You can always increase the bounty and abundance by introducing new discoveries, new technologies into the system that will then overcome the limits to growth, the carrying capacity, which is always pressing on what is the potential that we could sustain at a given moment. You could always overcome that by stimulating new creative discoveries and insights, right, that translate into technological progress. So that's an open system. And that's very much in alignment with the sorts of policies you see from the Belt and Road Initiative, the high-speed rail, the maglev rail, the approach to space, not for military, but for exploration and also mining prospects by Russia and China, who have signed a multitude of agreements on these things. Very much different in philosophy than the Malthusian order of depopulation, which is gripping the West.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And so it feels like almost we're going to end up with kind of like there's a NATO, but there's going to be perhaps something similar like that on the eastern side of the globe. Maybe with China, India, Iran.
And that's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And it's bringing in a lot of other members right now. But the thing is, NATO is associated with a collapsing system. Like, it can't float. The transatlantic cannot float. It's designed to collapse. And so that's also something to bring into the calculus, is that I would think that in my assessment, had the multipolar alliance not matured to the point that it is today, then the system could have been consciously unplugged a few years back when Russia, China were less independent. They were more locked into the singular systemic building that was assigned for demolition in a controlled way.
Yeah.
They've gotten out of that building and they've created an actual viable building that's not designed to collapse. So that's also creating a bit of it's setting a time frame for what can be done from the standpoint of the Western idiot grand strategists, who are a little insecure. They're running out of time. If they blow up their system without destroying Russia and China first, then Russia and China will, and all of the associated countries working together, will become the dominant force. That's unacceptable.
Yeah.
So it's creating a hectic, fear-based mess of desperation from the oligarchy that's running our part of the world, which doesn't necessarily make for a safer world either. When you have an animal which is like injured, freaked out, and has access to nuclear weapons.
The people on that side of the world aren't feeling. They got reason for hope. So I'm going to wrap things up. I want to show. There was a comment here I want to put up from the Dutch Tulip. I have not heard of this line of thinking about Britain running U.S. So, welcome to Matt Ehret. You're going to get to know Matt Ehret very, very well. So, here's Matt Ehret's Rumble, and what we've been doing is making videos from his books. That like the Clash of the Two Americas series, of which there are 4 books now.
There are. Sorry, just letting the cat in. There are 4 Untold History of Canada books, and there are currently 3 Clash of the Two Americas.
Yeah,
books, but there's going to be a 4th one that's going to go through what is really the British Empire, past and present. Because what you thought it was is not what it ever was. It was something else, and what it is today is also different from what people think. It's So if you go to the Canadian Patriot .org website or that Rumble channel, there's a lot of material going through that for sure.
Yeah. So either way, Dutch Tulip, I had similar mind-blowing experiences. It's CanadianPatriot.org.
Yeah, exactly. CanadianPatriot.org. Yeah.
I'm gonna put that screen up. The things like to find out to what degree England never stopped meddling, even after 1776. To find out that Lincoln's assassination was planned in Montreal, and that's where John Wilkes Booth went right after it. There's so much, as they say, untold history going on here. That is, 100% actual history. This should be taught in schools, but it's not. John Wilkes Booth is just a crazy mopo who shot the president.
Yeah, didn't get the acting he wanted.
The usual, the usual, right? So, Canadian Patriot, you can get these books. It's matthewehret.substack.com, correct?
Yeah, good. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Cynthia Chung, Matthew's wife. She's just as incredible. CynthiaChung.substack.
More incredible. But she's putting out a new book, her first full book as well, because she's co-written some of the chapters in the recent 3 books with me. But this new book coming out is going to be on the real history of fascism, like you've never seen it, from the Fabian Society, 19th century, to the present. It's going to be the first of 2 volumes going through, like, really where does fascism come from? She's going to tie it into some high-level occult forces as well, which is you can't know it if you don't look at the occult. And volume 2 is going to get even more deep into the role of some of the pagan occult aspects of what was it that people like Aleister Crowley were up to, Carl Jung.
Oh, wow.
All about how about the Huxleys? What were they doing? How did that all tie into this new fascist feudal system of technocracy that we've currently seen built up? So she's going to go through that in 2 volumes.
Interesting. I don't think anybody that's ever come across Carl Jung has never asked, what was that all about? That's great. That's going to be super interesting. Yeah. Great. Dutch Tulip's following you now. Can't wait to watch tonight. Yeah, there's a lot because, Matt, what do you do, about 8 interviews a week? Would that be about a fair number? Something like that. So there's a lot of content. You can find the videos that are on the book, because you can see they'll have a really nice kind of painting thumbnail, and have Clash of the Two Americas underneath them. And we've got a huge video waiting, our longest ever, waiting in the wings, like Lyndon Johnson, to come out and on those occult sources of the FBI. Sorry, was that tasteless?
No, that was good.
Yeah. Hey, voila. Thank you for answering our questions. I think we'll call it a night there, because I'm proud that we like kind of 2 hours. That's pretty good, man. I thought with 5 questions.
Hey, Rain, what time is it in Yukon right now?
9 o'clock.
9, yeah.
Oh, it's still early for you. Yeah, okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. But he's got to get
one last question for you, Matt. On a side note here, have you given any thought to, or would you even have any remote interest in talking to a guy like Peterson?
Oh yeah, I would be so happy to. I know he's a super busy guy with like, managers and an entourage. I don't know. I wouldn't know how to even begin to say hi.
Yeah, how do you go about that, right? But I
Just 'cause-
had the similar attitude about contacting you before I did.
I guess I could give it a shot. I don't know, Rain, if
Yeah.
you have any ideas how to go about saying hi.
well, you could try Michaela first. That might be an easier in.
I think
Talk about-
everything goes through Michaela. I think she actually runs Jordan Peterson.
That's
I,
cool.
I mentioned that now because Peterson himself seems to be like his own personal narrative seems to have shifted a bit in the past 6 months, where he's starting to bitch a little bit more about the quote unquote globalists. So I think I don't think he's not much of a history buff, that guy. I don't think so. He might be inclined and interested to really,
In his own way, he's big on Russia, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Probably be a history buff of Russia. But yeah, boy, that'd be a talk I'd like to see. That'd be an interesting talk.
I'd be curious. I've seen. I know what you're saying, Rain. I've seen his. There's an evolution in his thinking, which is good. I think overall.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to make him more dangerous.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he went through probably some form of subtle effort to kill him. And thank God again for the Russians, who had the only medical practice or service that was available to that could save him and just clear his blood of all
That's
of the
right.
chemicals. Right.
He went to Russia.
Yeah. His former son-in-law and Michaela played a big role in finding the right doctors in Russia who were willing to do things that nobody in Canada or the U.S. or Europe were willing to do.
Yeah. Well, his wife had that really weird, rare cancer or something. I think she might have got that cured in the States, though, or I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I
don't know what that was about. That was really wild, but
it's wild, and he's come back different. You can see he's different.
Yeah, and I think,
but I think better.
He
cries a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
he cries a lot.
These life and death experiences are valuable. I mean, you don't want to waste a good life and death experience to become a better person.
Yeah. But I see him now.
He's on the right
track. I saw
track.
him on Piers Morgan, that blowhard in England.
Yeah.
And if he just gets going on like why he talks about what he does and why it's important, it quickly becomes about the effect that it'll have on the everyman and the dangers that it has to the normal people in the world. And he starts crying every time. He just starts crying. I guess he's much more comfortable with that, much more in touch with that.
It's good. It's authentic. It's
authentic, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah,
because a lot of people in the political sphere will talk about stuff like that, but you can obviously see at least Peterson believes it.
I would reach out to Michaela, Matt.
All right, you know what? I'm actually under Substack. I'll shoot her a little hello, and I'll see if there's any resonance.
She's a little bit more rogue in who she'll interview, but then my guess is if she really likes the conversation that you have, she'll be all over her dad to get to talk to you himself.
Yeah. Would be fun.
If we send one of the bids or one of your really good interviews, I always thought your appearance on the coronavirus investigation, the grand jury, that was great. You got into that London stuff, really good there. I don't know. Anyway,
he's a really big Anglophile, though.
Right.
When I heard his remarks on the death of the Queen, did you guys see that?
Yeah,
I did, and there's lots that I agreed with in principle. Mm-hmm. But when you're looking at actually who's involved in the histories, it's kind of like, maybe we shouldn't be so excited about this or that. But the principles of what he was talking about, I was okay with a lot of it.
Tradition, stability, I guess. Yeah, but there's such a...
But... the people we're talking about, we're still living the consequences of all that. And hey, future video, right?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah,
cool.
All right, we're gonna call it an end there, everyone. Thank you for coming in. Some great new people in the chat tonight. Thank you, Matt, for coming out. Absolutely brilliant as usual. And we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Bye, Rain.
All right,
you guys.
Hey. Thanks, Matt.
Good night, everyone.